My mother-in-law had a rebirth and insisted that the seventh prince divorce me. The day after my wedding to Peiji, Consort Ying sent 2 palace maids to me. I politely refused. She lay on the bed sobbing. Everyone says noble ladies are formidable, and now even I, the birth mother of a prince, am not respected. He quickly helped her up and angrily rebuked me. Shen Miao, on the 2nd day of our marriage, you made your mother-in-law cry from anger. Is this your etiquette? I lowered my eyes submissively. Husband, please don't be angry. Since Mother Consort truly wishes to add servants to attend to you, I agree. Peiji choked, looking at his mother, seemingly in disbelief. Mother Consort, Shen Shi just married in. It might not be appropriate to add servants now. Consort Ying raised her head, her eyes misty, glanced at me hazily, then looked at Peiji and covered her face with a handkerchief mournfully. It is Mother Consort's fault. Mother Consort is of humble birth and doesn't understand these things. I only thought. As she spoke, her gaze drifted towards me again, as if somewhat fearful and daring not to speak. Everyone says General Shen's legitimate daughter is formidable. Mother Consort fears she might wrong you. Peiji was heartbroken, gently patting her to soothe her while comforting her. Mother, don't be afraid. With your son here, no one can hurt you. Peiji still ended up taking those 2 palace maids away. He clenched his fist and lightly coughed, a bit awkward. Mia. My mother concubine didn't mean any harm. Don't take it to heart. I'll get rid of those 2 palace maids when I get back. I nodded, docile and humble. I don't mind. My father, General Shen, has a fiery temper, and my mother, the eldest princess, is also hot-tempered. If they heard about concubine Ying's humiliating actions, they would surely raise hell. Peiji married me for the Shen family's support. How could he dare let anyone know? Looking at his hopeful eyes, I nodded. Could I be so foolish as to say it myself? This kind of thing it is naturally. Luckily, the young master is on Madam's side. I smiled and shook my head. Actually, I truly didn't mind. From the day I had my rebirth on my wedding night yesterday, I knew that I would no longer have any expectations for this man. Concubine Ying was originally a foot-washing maid beside the empress, taken in by the drunk emperor, and bestowed the title of Daying. There were many princes in the palace, and Consort Ying was quickly forgotten by the emperor. The mother and son were not favored and suffered greatly. It wasn't until these princes fought each other to a pulp that the 7th prince gradually emerged. Consort Ying's status rose with his, and she was enfoffed as a consort. However, her demeanor was still exactly the same as when she was a foot-washing maid. Those weren't my words, by the way, but came from the empress's mouth. The moment those words came out, Consort Ying's face flushed red, looking as if she was about to burst into tears. Peiji also looked at me anxiously, hoping I'd go, and thinking about it now, I was truly foolishly pitiful. Upon returning to the manor, Peiji ordered 2 palace maids to be dismissed. One of them cried, hugging his leg, "Your Highness, her ladyship ordered us to serve your Highness. Sending us away now, isn't that slapping her ladyship in the face?" "That is right, Your Highness. Consort Ying loves you deeply. She'll be sad, Your Highness." The other also knelt down. Peiji looked at me, somewhat troubled. It was always like this. Whenever his catching my expression, he hesitantly opened his mouth. "How about we send them away in a couple of days?" I nodded with a smile. "That is fine too." He let out a sigh of relief and took my hand naturally. "Miao, marrying you is truly my good fortune. In my previous life, I hadn't kept these 2 palace maids. Not only that, but I also covered up the scandal of Consort Ying sending a palace maid. I was devoted to Peiji, and naturally wanted to handle everything for him perfectly. But he thought I was overly jealous and disrespected my mother-in-law by relying on my family background. Since that is the case, I lifted my face from the mist and smiled faintly. Since that is the case, Nanny, why don't you help her out? She frowned. "Miss, are you tired of His Highness?" I casually pushed the cup aside. My father is the great general protector of the nation, and my mother is the eldest princess. I was born a noble among nobles. If I say I don't want to suffer this grievance, is that acceptable? The nanny's brows furrowed together. Miss, do you want to divorce? As expected of my wet nurse, she truly understands me, but the young master is, after all, a prince and currently highly favored by the emperor. This matter might not be easy. When Peiji and Chushui were discovered, the sun was high. I leaned against the doorway. I bit my lower lip. My husband means, Chushui drugged you, he quickly agreed. Exactly. She brought soup yesterday, saying she learned my mother's craft. And after that, my head became dizzy, and I lost all memory. As he spoke, look, the bowl is still there. I paused. That person cupped his hands and stepped forward. Reporting to the seventh prince consort, Peijio opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Naturally, he couldn't have imagined that this empty bowl had long been swapped by me, and the soup drugged by Nanny Shen was completely poured out after Peiji drank it. Chushui naturally also didn't expect her plan to go so smoothly. Not long after, the news of the seventh prince sleeping with a palace maid, given by his imperial mother on the second day of his wedding, spread. Like wildfire, it wouldn't have spread so quickly normally, but this palace maid, she was pregnant. Although the month was shallow, it was indeed a happy pulse. Paige's face turned red, as he asked me, This is self. If I hadn't sent those two away in this life, I wouldn't have known my mother-in-law could be this stupid. Before he could respond, sweating coldly, Your Highness, Paige's throat tightened, and he gripped my hand. Mother consort was of humble birth. She suffered a lot to protect me when I was young. This sachet she also did it for my sake. Before the emperor and empress can Mira mediate. This time, I ignored him and followed the palace envoys into the palace. This concubine, consort Ying continued to cry. Which daughter-in-law doesn't swallow her anger? How come when it comes to the princess, your demeanor is exactly the same as when you were this palace's foot-washing maid? I had just entered when I heard that sentence. Immediately, I froze. These words seemed to have come much earlier than in my previous life. Peiji, who was by my side, had a face that alternated between green and white. Seeing concubine Ying kneeling on the ground, and the empress and eldest princess seated above, his sinister aura was almost uncontrollable. Seeing us enter, everyone's gaze turned towards us. Peiji's eyes lit up, and his expectant gaze also turned to me. I knew he was waiting for me to save concubine Ying. I didn't even glance at concubine Ying, and bowed deeply to the empress. It is this daughter-in-law's unfilialness, for not handling the affairs of the manor well, and causing Mother Empress to worry. Seeing it was me, the empress reined in her temper. The empress sneered, Seventh Prince's consort is truly merciful, becoming a mother as soon as she enters the door, and still so magnanimous. I lowered my head in shame, my gaze shifting to concubine Ying, appearing troubled. My mother understood my meaning. Concubine Ying personally sent the people. How dare Miaoa act on her own? How about I, as her mother, favor my daughter this once? Keep the child but remove the mother. What do you think, Your Majesty? Hearing the words keep the child, but remove the mother, the empress was also speechless. I narrowed my eyes, looking at the calm and composed Peiji, my brows slightly furrowed. Even with a burden, he could stand out among the princes. He indeed has his abilities. Amidst concubine Ying's incredulous, rolling tears, my mother's voice was quite satisfied. Since Your Highness already has a plan, this Empress Dowager will not interfere with Your Highness's family matters. I still hope Your Highness will treat my daughter well. Peiji bowed. Mother-in-law, rest assured. He leaned on the soft couch, rubbing his forehead wearily, his cuff still stained with undried water. I knew that before leaving the palace, he had gone to concubine Ying's palace to comfort her for quite a while. He probably endured a lot of complaints. I knew he was annoyed. If it were in my previous life, I would have certainly comforted him meticulously, but now, I didn't want to bother with him, so I waved my hand and instructed Yuna, I'm hungry, serve the meal. Peiji watched my actions and suddenly spoke, Mother is very sad. I looked sideways. He stared into my eyes, corners of his eyes still red. He twitched the corners of his mouth, his eyes growing cold. Shen family, Imperial concubine was humiliated because of you today. Don't you have anything to say? Shen family. I turned my head and met his gloomy eyes. My tone calm. Since husband thinks it is inappropriate, why punish Chu Shui and the other to death by flogging, wanting to be a gentleman in front of my mother and the empress, and also wanting to satisfy concubine Ying? Hypocritical. Hypocritical. It was precisely because I was too understanding that in my previous life I was tormented by concubine Ying, despised by Peiji, which led to the decline of the Shen family and a heavy price. Peiji, this person, is pig-headed. If he wants me to understand, I must understand. So when he arranged for me to enter the palace to beg for forgiveness, I wasn't surprised. However, I already had a plan. In Yihe Palace, concubine Ying was very happy to see me arrive. She had been confined by the empress for some days, and she looked haggard, but this joy was strangely peculiar. She led me to sit on the soft couch together, a smile on her face, her tone gentle. Meower, it was I who thought improperly before, but we are close mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Logically speaking, the royal family rarely had this notion of setting rules, and even if they did, it was for the legitimate mother. If word got out that consort Ying was so eager to set rules for me, at most people would say she, being from a servant background, in my previous life, she was also like this. When my father and brother were framed for colluding with the enemy and betraying the country, she petitioned the emperor to set rules for me. She punished me by making me kneel in the snow in winter, and made me retrieve a hairpin she accidentally dropped into the fire for her, not to mention serving her meals or helping her with her ablutions. When my father and brother returned victorious, she again cried to the emperor, "Your concubine merely wanted to get close to her daughter-in-law, being from a servant background. Your concubine is unlearned and fears she used the wrong methods." That month of humiliation left me with a body full of ailments at a young age. It also made me completely estranged from her. Now, she is trying the same trick again. She told me to serve her food, and I obediently did. She told me to help her change, and I submissively changed her clothes. She looked very satisfied and smug, until the palace attendant brought a basin of water and placed it by her feet. Consort Ying curled her orchid finger, implying, before I could speak. Consort Ying covered her lips, quickly putting on a choked voice. "So, the princess consort looks down on me. A mother-in-law from a humble background. This is putting me on the spot. I still remember in my previous life, she bossed me around. Can't do it, then learn. Being a foot washing maid isn't that easy. I don't know how many times I washed her feet. If I was slightly careless, I'd be punished with kneeling, until I finally earned her satisfied approval. I still remember her toes stepping on the back of my hand, her toenails digging into my flesh, an air of superiority about her, as expected of a noble lady from a distinguished family. Even her skill in serving to wash feet is top-notch. In this life, I don't intend to give her that satisfaction. If Imperial Mother wants someone to wash her feet, I have a candidate here. My voice carried a smile, but my eyes were icy cold. I pulled the person Yona had just brought in and suddenly pushed her down in front of Consort Ying's foot basin. As water splashed, she saw the person's face, and was startled. I smiled sweetly. To be honest with Imperial Mother, this maid came from who knows where. A few days ago, she actually tried to climb into His Highness. I thought she was an escaped slave, and was going to send her to the officials. But then she said she was your niece. I was about to beat her to death with a stick right then and there, but then she said she was a maid who had just entered the manor. So I asked her what kind of maid she was, and guess what? She actually said she was a foot washing maid. So, it just so happened that today, I brought her here to serve Imperial concubine Mother with her foot bath. Consort Ying's face turned green and then white, and she trembled, unable to speak. That was her own niece. Feng Shui. Climbing into bed was also her instruction. In her previous life, she was sent to the fourth prince's side as a secondary consort, and later, after the fourth prince ascended the throne, she became noble consort Feng, contending with me as equals. Now, I caught her before she could climb into bed, precisely for today. Seeing Consort Ying, Feng Shui seemed to see a life-saving straw and quickly crawled over. It is Shui, please save me. My expression darkened, and I coldly shouted, presumptuous, dare you still try to implicate imperial concubine mother? Guards, beat her. Shen Miao, stop it. Yana followed the order, striking Feng Shui repeatedly, left and right, making her beg for mercy non-stop. The crisp slaps and pleas for mercy mixed together. The palace servants around Consort Ying had already been dismissed by me. She frantically tried to pull Yana away, but I stopped her. I held her shoulders, meeting her eyes. This time, I didn't hide my sinister, malevolent gaze, nor the deep desire for revenge and hatred within me. She was startled by me, shivered, rolled her eyes, and fainted. When Peiji arrived, I was wiping away tears with a handkerchief. His face was very dark, and he said in a hoarse voice, the imperial physician said Mother Consort was overcome with anger. Shen Miao, is this how you serve your mother-in-law? I feigned grievance. She is just a servant. How was I to know Mother Consort cared so much? He raised his voice, full of anger. What servant? That is cousin Feng from the Feng family. I pretended to be surprised. What? Could it really be that Mother Consort told her to climb into your highness's bed? His face suddenly turned very ugly. After a long while, he stiffly turned his face away. Mother Consort surely didn't mean that. I chuckled softly, saying nothing. However, before returning to the manor, he suddenly turned back, staring intently into my eyes. Shen Miao, you really don't know, your so-called maid is my cousin. The second day Consort Ying woke up. I went to see her. Her gaze was a bit vacant, and she looked very different from before. When she saw me, it was like seeing a ghost, with a strong fear in her ferocity. Come over, you leave. Fei, you want to poison me. I curved my lips, feigning concern. The moment the door curtain fell, my face darkened. Consort Ying, she also had a rebirth. After that, I didn't see Consort Ying again. But Peiji went into the palace from time to time. The look in his eyes towards me became deeper and deeper, and his attitude towards me became more and more perfunctory. The spy by Consort Ying's side told me that she had recently changed like a different person, seemingly able to foresee things and events. She even told Peiji to divorce me. When he asked why, she insinuated that I would kill her. She also hinted to Peiji that he could be emperor even without relying on the Shen family. Peiji didn't tell me these things, but I knew he wouldn't divorce me. After all, Peiji still had some affection for me. And besides, the Shen family was powerful. So how could he give up before leaving? The scout gave me a small pouch of powder. She said Consort Ying had someone get it from outside the palace. I had someone test it, and it was a love potion. Consort Ying, who pretended to be innocent and gentle, was actually narrow-minded and vengeful. I didn't even need to think to know this thing was meant for me. If she wanted Peiji to divorce me, she would definitely find fault with me. I just don't know who the man she is using to frame me is. On the third day of the third month, when she saw me, she was also kind and benevolent, as if the past unpleasantness never existed. Night fell, and the lanterns were lit, glasses clinked, and colors shimmered. As I walked, a palace maid pouring wine spilled it on my dress. She was so scared that she kowtowed repeatedly, begging for mercy. Consort Ying walked over and helped her up, gently and kindly. Don't be afraid, 7th Prince Consort won't blame you. Then she looked at me and said, isn't that right, Mio? She was always good at playing the good person, and she liked to do it for others. I ignored her, and spoke coldly to the palace attendant. Then I turned to Consort Ying, whose expression was stiff, and put on a smile again. The palace has its royal mother. If you want to plead for this palace maid, you'd better go find Her Majesty the Empress. She opened her mouth several times, as if to scold me, but held back. Oh, there is no need for that. Mio's clothes are wet. I'll have someone take you to change. Recalling those powders, my heart stirred slightly. Here it comes. I knew the palace maid, pouring wine, had added something to my drink. The palace attendant was still leading the way, and I pretended to be drunk and stumbled. To Marmot the hidden by his predicament. The moment the lock clicked, he was still mumbling, "Mir" in his mouth. I felt like I had fallen into an ice cellar. "He is my elder brother, Shen Mu." Something flashed through my mind. And I shook my head, trying to drive it away. Consort Ying's intentions were so malicious. In my previous life, the Shen family was exiled, with only my brother Shen Mu distinguished himself in the army, and rose again. Even Pei Jie, who became emperor, had to be somewhat wary. He was also my only reliance to remain empress, after the Shen family lost power. Now she not only wants to ruin me, but also my elder brother. If this kind of reputation gets out, how can the Shen family survive? Since that is the case, I don't need to save face for them. I fed Shen Mu the medicine. When he woke up, he was still groggy. Seeing himself in such a mess, and me in the corner, he seemed a bit embarrassed. "Mia, what happened?" I smiled silently. "Brother, your little sister invites you to watch a good show." I returned to the main hall. Consort Ying was laughing and talking with someone, covering her mouth with a handkerchief and curving her lips. She seemed to be in a good mood. Soon, a maid whispered something in her ear. Her expression suddenly changed, and she hurried out. I lowered my head and drank tea, nodding slightly at Yuna, who was gesturing beside me. In the center of the main hall, songs and dances flourished, and red silks fluttered. The lingering smoke curled up, and calculating the time, the seventh prince, he the little eunuch, looked at me, seemingly with pity. "At Waiming Garden, your majesty, you should go and see." Outside the gate of Waiming Garden, many palace maids and eunuchs gathered. Seeing the empress coming with her people, they scattered in a hurry. It was quiet all around, and the sounds from inside the room could be heard clearly. Most of those who followed the empress were women. Even so, their faces were flushed with embarrassment, and some had already covered the ears of the young girls beside them. The eunuch who brought the news spoke with difficulty. "This servant came to clean, and heard." The servant originally wanted to stop them, but was beaten out. A man and a woman were entangled, and upon discovering they were disturbed, a teacup was thrown out. What followed was a rough male voice. "Get out." That voice was precisely Peiji's bastard. The empress trembled with rage. "Who are you telling to get out?" The person on the bed seemed to finally regain some consciousness. The gaze that looked up gradually changed from bewildered to perplexed, and after looking around, was slowly replaced by fear. "It is not like this. It is not like this." Before Peiji could speak, a figure suddenly rushed in from outside. The newcomer's makeup and hair were slightly disheveled, a large red bump was on her forehead, and there was a fresh wound on the back of her hand. As soon as she entered the door, she knelt down, crying profusely and complaining. "Someone has harmed my Jaya. Empress, you must clear my son's name." It was Consort Ying. She came from who knows where, looking very disheveled. In the small room, there was a disoriented Peiji, and a disheveled woman, especially the woman. Her eyes were still hazy, seemingly not fully comprehending the situation before her. "Oh right, this woman with hazy eyes is Feng Shui, the niece of concubine Ying, whom I just gave to concubine Ying as a footmaid." In this situation, no matter how anyone explained it, it was useless. Seeing me standing there, concubine Ying's eyes gleamed brightly, turning sinister and hateful, pointing at me and yelling, "It is you, Shen Miao. It must be you who harmed my son. Tell me, quickly, was it you?" Now, the way everyone looked at me was not just pity, but profound sorrow. Even my sworn enemy, who was always at odds with me, shook their head at me. To outsiders, I'm not an idiot, so why would I harm my own husband, and why would I push my own husband to someone else? Outsiders would only think that concubine Ying was playing her old tricks again, trying to cause trouble for her daughter-in-law. But it backfired with this incident happening. The empress couldn't even cover it up in time now, let alone, she didn't intend to cover it up. Under strict investigation, it was indeed discovered that the seventh prince had been drugged, and this drug was administered by Feng Shui. According to her, she was instructed by concubine Ying. Concubine Ying knelt on the ground, trembling with rage, staring at Feng Shui, unable to speak. As the dust settled, I gracefully "Your subject requests a divorce. please allow it. Father Emperor and Mother Empress. Peiji looked over sharply, his gaze as piercing as a knife, enunciating each word heavily. I will not allow it. I ignored him, my gaze falling upon concubine Ying, and asked an irrelevant question. I wonder if the villain who injured imperial concubine mother has been found. Concubine Ying was stunned and blurted out. What villain? It was clearly my son's accident. After speaking, she realized something was wrong, and glared fiercely at me. Shen Miao, what do you mean by this? Jia didn't hurt me on purpose. A son injuring his mother is a great sin of unfilial piety. It was clearly concubine Ying who discovered their good deed, and tried to stop them, but was struck away by Peiji, whose head was spinning. My tone was cold. Peiji is unfilial and unjust. It is not inappropriate for him and me to divorce. I am a noble lady from a prominent family, and the seventh prince was at fault first. To still want to divorce the wife at a time like this, aren't they afraid of being drowned by people's spit? Sure enough, the emperor was also angered by concubine Ying's thoughtlessness. With a wave of his large hand, he finally granted us a divorce. With sudden-eyed expression, I lowered my eyes and nodded. If getting married means enduring all sorts of grievances and suffering, just cleaning and taking inventory took several days. During this time, Peiji never showed up. I heard that the emperor was completely sick of concubine Ying, and demoted her to a day Ying. Concubine Ying cried day and night, and Peiji was comforting her. The day everything ended, I took one last look at the prince's residence where I had lived for half my past life, and turned away without any attachment. At the entrance of the residence, I saw Peiji. His brows were tightly furrowed, his sorrow was unresolvable, and he looked much more haggard. Seeing the luggage behind me, his face immediately tensed up. Shen Miao, have you thought this through? Once you leave this door, you and I will have no further connection. His expression was arrogant, as if he was giving me one last chance. It was then that I remembered that in my past life, he allowed others to mistreat me in various ways, simply because he knew I loved him. In this life, I no longer love him, so I have nothing to fear. I gave him a bright smile, just like when we first met. I couldn't ask for more. He froze, but called out to me, as I passed him. Shen Miao, he said, word by word, you also had a rebirth, didn't you? It seems concubine Ying told him. He chuckled. My complexion wasn't good, and was a little saying that. His expression turned serious. Meow meow, this play, it is your doing. I just think Meow Meow has to scheme so much. It is very hard. From now on, whatever you want to do, tell me, I will help you. He then looked at me, his expression gentle. Anything at all. Tears blurred my eyes. In my previous life, he was also like that, so gently telling me, Meow Meow likes the seventh prince. I will help you marry him. Meow Meow wants to be empress. I will help Peiji become emperor. Shen Mu will always be Meow Meow's backing and armor, and then, he truly became my backing and armor for a lifetime. After returning to the Shen residence, my days became much more relaxed. I spent the whole day tending to flowers and plants, feeling quite free and easy. From my mother's rambling, I heard news from outside. I heard that in order to cover up the scandal, the royal family hastily married Feng Shu to Peiji as a concubine. I heard that the seventh prince was implicated and alienated by the emperor, staying cooped up in his residence all day. And there was concubine Ying. The palace servants were opportunistic, even an eunuch could bully her. My mother's eyebrows danced. I smiled. My mother doted on me the most, so her hand in this was inevitable. I still hadn't completely let my guard down, because I knew that Peiji had deep scheme. The matter of the seventh prince secretly planning to suppress the rebels was presented, and the emperor was greatly pleased. Peiji was full of vigor and high. Now that King Pingnan has been captured, Father Emperor can rest assured. The impact of that scandal on him also faded. My mother looked at me, a little worried. The emperor's health is not as good as before, and he now values Peiji greatly. A few days ago, the seventh prince received grace, and pleaded for Ying Daren, and now, she is Ying consort. I heard that the emperor intends to make the seventh prince, the crown prince. I withdrew my hands from tending to the flowers and plants, wiped my hands with a handkerchief, and smiled to comfort her. Mother, don't worry, they can't do anything to me. One page allowed her to enjoy half a lifetime of glory and wealth. It was the same in the previous life. She safely leaped from Ying consort to Empress of the Western Palace, even outshining the Empress Dowager of the Eastern Palace. Now that Ying consort has told Peiji about the rebirth, he will only thrive even more. Since Peiji and I have fallen out to this extent, when Peiji ascends the throne someday, the Shen family will surely suffer. How can I be at peace? My gaze fell upon my elder brother, who was currently chatting with father, and a faint smile spread across my face. Mother, tomorrow I wish to enter the palace to pay my respects to Her Imperial Majesty the Empress. No matter how willful I am, I would never want to implicate my family. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. The entire imperial palace exuded an atmosphere of joy. Before I even reached, having experienced such significant ups and downs, she no longer acted subserviently. Instead, she became overbearing and ostentatious. Seeing me bow in greeting, she didn't let me rise. Hooking her red-stained fingernail, she pinched my chin, wearing the smug expression of a petty person who has come into power. What, Miss Shen? I gazed coldly at her. This humble subject is going to see the Empress. Seeing her look surprised and hesitant, I twisted the knife further, curling my lips into a cold scoff. Consort Ying, His Seventh Highness, he isn't the crown prince yet. Finally, she gritted her teeth and left furiously. Shen Miao, you just wait. In Cunning Palace. The Empress had long since heard the news from outside. She allowed the palace maid to massage her shoulders, looking quite displeased. Shen Miao, I warned you before. Now even if you regret it, it is too late. I lowered my head. To seek your cooperation. Indeed, the Empress only had one daughter, Princess Keong, who had already married, so it didn't matter who became emperor. In her previous life, she also became the Empress Dowager, with a noble status, but she underestimated Consort Ying's character. Once Consort Ying gained power, she began to retaliate against those who had bullied and humiliated her. Especially the Empress, who used to be her foot-washing maid, was openly and secretly humiliated by her, and passed away within a few years. However, these things weren't very important, and she wouldn't believe them even if I told her. More importantly, I raised my eyebrows, looked at the Empress, who was relaxed and unconcerned on the couch, and slowly began. Back then, Your Majesty and the eldest princess gave birth in the palace at the same time. I wonder if anyone might have swapped the dragon and phoenix. Clang, the teacup shattered, spilling tea all over the floor. I only found out about this later, in my previous life after Consort Ying died. I cleaned out her palace servants and discovered this secret. It turned out that the Empress had given birth to a boy, and the eldest princess, my mother, had given birth to a girl. Consort Ying, who was still a foot-washing maid at the time, teamed up with other imperial concubines to swap the dragon and phoenix. They swapped my older brother with Princess Keoyang. They swapped my curation. After all, if that incident hadn't happened, her son would have been the crown prince. How could she not hate? I discussed with the Empress to expose all of this on the day the seventh prince was established as the crown prince. The emperor was assassinated. Also assassinated at the same time was my elder brother, Shen Mu. My heart plummeted. In my previous life, this kind of thing didn't happen. The Empress frantically told me that the emperor was fine. The Empress closed her eyes and nodded. The emperor discovered that Shen Mu's blood could merge with his own, found an imperial physician to confirm it, and verified this matter. Shen Miao, our plan doesn't need to proceed. All of this came too coincidentally. I suddenly remembered Shen Mu's words before he left. He said, Shen Mu will always be Miao Miao's armor and backing. I closed my eyes, unable to speak. So, my elder brother had always known he wasn't a child of the Shen family. So he had already known he was the Empress's son. He knew it in the previous life too. But because I said I liked Peiji and wanted to be Empress, he gave up that supreme position, even using his military merits to become my backing. The seventh prince's position as crown prince is unstable. At the same time, when the sixth prince was still Shen Mu, He had already achieved many military merits, and his prestige was extremely high. Now that he is a prince and also the legitimate son of the empress, he is simply a natural guarantee for the crown prince position. Paige's expression grew increasingly gloomy and sinister. Every time he saw me, it was as if he wanted to stare a hole through me. Unfortunately, he could only use his eyes. The palace's stolen dragon, switched phoenix case gradually came to light. Besides the matter of switching children, it also implicated the corruption case from back then. Many people were involved as masterminds. It was too complicated, and it even implicated the Grand Empress Dowager. However, the direct masterminds were two high-ranking concubines, and Consort Ying. The emperor was furious, and except for the deceased Grand Empress Dowager, all were imprisoned. The rumor had a lot of detail, saying that the seventh prince's appearance was very similar to Consort Ying's old lover. There were even unpleasant rumors saying that since Consort Ying had already committed the act of a weasel for a prince swapping children, what was giving the emperor a green hat, cuckolding him? This matter eventually reached the emperor's ears. In his imperial rage, a blood test was performed. Consort Ying cried out to heaven and earth, shouting, "I know." He must have confirmed he was the emperor's biological son, and merely regarded this as a farce. But what he didn't know was that some people could frame others, and some could twist right and wrong. The white jade porcelain bowl was brought over. Paige's expression didn't change. The porcelain bowl was brought before the emperor, and the eunuch carefully pricked his finger. Paige's face slowly tensed from its calm state, finally unable to maintain his composure, and he shouted loudly, "Impossible. The water must be problematic." The emperor's dark eyes also gradually turned gloomy. He nodded, and had Paige's people go get another cup. Still didn't merge. He completely panicked. How could this be? How could this be? Consort Ying, like a madwoman, tried to pounce over. Impossible. Jia is the emperor's child. Impossible. The emperor seemed to have aged 10 years. He waved his hand, and Paige and Consort Ying were led away. Mixing up the royal bloodline, they had no way out. Afterward, the empress asked me if I had tampered with it, and I nodded. It wasn't the water that was problematic, it was Paige's blood. I had given him medicine. His blood wouldn't merge with anyone's. When a person makes one mistake, their other mistakes are easily accepted as true. This incompatible blood sealed his doom. The empress gazed deeply into my eyes. "Shen Miao, you exposed your schemes to me. Aren't you afraid I won't tolerate you?" I also looked directly at her and smiled calmly. If I wanted to be the crown princess, I naturally wouldn't dare expose them. But if I'm just Miss Shen, then why wouldn't your majesty tolerate me? She seemed stunned, muttering, "You have no interest in Armu." I took a step back and bowed. Whether it is Shen Mu or the crown prince, Shen Miao will always view him as an elder brother. I knew her worries and didn't want Shen Mu to be criticized. This way, it was for the best. It was I who delivered Consort Ying's poisoned wine. She was delirious. Her gaze was like a venomous snake materialized, her voice full of spite. "Shen Miao, it is you. You're the one who ruined me. You clearly knew that Jia was the emperor's child. You also remember what happened in the previous life, don't you?" I didn't deny it. Leaning closer to her, smiling sweetly. "It was me. What can you do about it?" Her face immediately became strange, as if bewildered, and also confused and hateful. "Why? You clearly won, didn't you? You clearly became empress, and could still kill me. The supreme power. Why did you drag Jia down?" My tone was icy cold. "Your ladyship is truly amusing. Does winning a fight mean I willingly fought? Does winning mean the suffering I once endured counts for nothing? The child you miscarried, the downfall of the Shen family, do they all count for nothing?" Her face turned green, then white. She stubbornly argued, "It is your ladyship who can't let go. Consort Ying, you are the one who has never forgotten your past as a foot-washing maid. That is why you constantly sought attention, wantonly trampling on those with higher status than her. Now, a cup of poisoned wine sent her away, just like in the In September of that year, the following year, Princess Consort's legitimate daughter Shen Miao was conferred the title of Princess Changle. On the day of her investiture, Peimu came to observe the ceremony. He was as gentle as ever. May Meow Meow find peace in this life, and joy every year.